Christian from the Community Brew Shop here with, as always, Derek. And tonight we have a special treat for you. For International Women's Day, we decided that we wanted to interview a woman brewer in our little community and kind of get to know her take on the kind of the brewing scene in Nova Scotia, and just kind of pick her brain, get a different perspective on the hobby that we all love. So I'd like to welcome Chelsea to the call. You may know her as Lady Scotia Brews on Instagram. I think she's been brewing for a long time and she's had some success with it, but we're going to ask her some questions tonight and find out. So Derek, anything you want to say before you get started?
No, just we already talked before, so it's kind of weird now, but thanks for joining us again. Yeah, we appreciate it. And yeah, we're going to ask you for some advice at the end because anyways, we'll see what we can compare with our recipe notes, that kind of thing. So
yeah, we had a very interesting, a very odd request for a beer yesterday from a friend of ours. So we'll get you some input on it. So yeah. So I guess we'll just start with some kind of get to know you questions a little bit. So can you tell us a little bit like how long you've been brewing? How did you get started? Like, did you start home brewing? Did you know a brewer, commercially? And how often do you brew, I guess, really?
Yeah, sure. Well, I have it kind of a funny backstory. And whenever anybody asks me how I started brewing, I always say I started as a kid, which is kind of, an odd way to respond to that. But my parents are home brewers and they've been making beer for, I think it's like over 40 years now. So I literally grew up with it, which is kind of the reason why I am. So like there's many pictures of me sitting on the kitchen floor helping them bottle beer as a child, and it like put me to work. And so I learned everything kind of, as I grew up. So I had that interest and just love for it, which was just ingrained. So then as I went through school and kind of started to focus on science and everything, I became very interested in the science behind brewing and kind of pursued an interest that way. And then I guess I started home brewing myself probably about 10 years ago, like 10 years or so ago, I think would be like on a full-time hobby basis. And it just has been progressing since then, wherever like I've moved around a bit, so I kind of have to have a mobile setup, but it's kind of grown from there, and I just keep doing it.
That's awesome. But Derek and I primarily brew outside, so we're big fans of the mobile setup that you can kind of move around and stuff like that. So.
I am back to an outside type of brewing setup. I had a garage where I used to live in PEI, but when I moved back home here to Nova Scotia, I do not have a garage now. So winter brewing is cold.
Yeah.
I can't do it as often, unfortunately.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about your setup? Did you always kind of brewed the same way? Have you always done all grain, or did you kind of take the similar path of the extracts and maybe brew in a bag, stuff like that?
So I started with partial. I did grain and extract, and kind of developed my method from there, and grew into all grain. But at the start of it, just because of the size of my kettle and mash tun and all that, I could only do partial. But over the last 5 years or so, I was able to get a nice mash tun. Nice. So I was able to switch into all grain, which is what I do now.
Okay.
Nice. Yeah, I kind of went the same path, I guess. Kind of started with those like really crappy like little things you buy at the grocery store, like the Cooper's kits or whatever. And they were always pretty nasty, and then eventually get into the malt and a little bit of specialty grain, and then finally just kind of splurged and bought went the whole way.
The Coopers, I have specific memories of the Coopers sitting on top of my parents' wood stove to warm up before they pour it in. Like that's how they start it, and they progressed over the years too, which I think is why I kind of jumped into partial immediately. yeah,
there's nothing better than the fresh grain going in, I find, but
oh, it smells.
Yeah. So I guess kind of what I always do when I'm brewing too, like I always try to draw influence from somewhere. So where do you usually draw like I know you talked about your parents, and it's funny because a good friend of ours, John, talks about the same thing. We actually went up to his parents' farm this fall and harvested some hops up there that they have just kind of growing around, which is fun. But he said the same thing, like his mom always used to brew, and he says, you know, my mom taught me what a good stout tastes like, kind of thing. But is there any other like influences you kind of draw upon when you're either like developing a recipe, or you had a beer that you really liked, like a craft beer that you're like, I want to make something like that, or like what do you usually draw your influence from?
All the above.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good question.
Yeah. I spent some time in the States. I lived in New England for several years, and the scene down there is insane. So I got a lot of influence, and well, let's be real, I drank a lot while I was down there. I was going around testing everything out, so I kind of took from that. But I always, if I try something I like, I automatically want to try and make it myself, or do it better, because I just like or I just come up with kind of a silly idea in my head. Like I have a food science background, so I kind of have this thing for flavors and an intuition when it comes to that side of food, and I bring that into the beer world, and can kind of I want to try different combinations and things that may seem weird, but I want to experiment with them. Like I'm very experimental. Brewer. I like to try different approaches and different flavor combinations and hops and all that stuff. So I honestly just play.
Yeah, like the rest of us. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yep. So do you have a favorite style that you like to brew, or a favorite style that you like to drink, or do you really keep that randomness kind of going at all times?
I do keep a randomness, but stouts have always been like my go-to. I just enjoy drinking them. I enjoy making them. Recently, I've been really into the juicy IPAs. A lot of people have.
Like everybody, yeah.
Like everybody else. I went through the sour phase, I go through the phases, but I always tend to come back to stouts. They're my comfort. And, but I'll brew. I'll brew and drink anything. Like I like to try new things.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. And when you brew for your setup, so we know you do all grain, of course, now, but do you prefer to do bottles or kegs, or do you kind of play around? Derek and I are big fans of bottles because we like I guess the name of the Community Brew Shop. We like the community aspect of it. So like I did a peanut butter porter a few months ago, and I had, close to 40 bottles, and I think I only kept about 5 of them. Like they all just kind of dispersed, right? So that's what we really like about bottling. So do you bottle? Do you keg?
I bottle. I'm a bottler. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I've always bottled. I keep toying with the idea of venturing into kegland. But the reason that you just said is why I stick with bottles, is they have their pros and cons, but you get to share really, easily with bottles. And I like, well, my friends like it when I share my beers.
Yeah, we have a loaner program with the store to try and encourage new home brewers, because we've got 2 or 3 sets of gear now amongst the 2 of us. So we lend out gear, and Derek did up a great manual to kind of, walk everybody through step by step. And it's a really selfish business endeavor, because we just want people to start giving us back the beer that we've been lending out to them. So it works out well that way. So
That's good. It's good.
Yeah. So one thing we noticed from like your Instagram too, that after you won the Gahan competition there, you were able to go on their larger system and kind of employ your skills there. We just experienced a similar thing a couple weeks ago. We brewed a Vienna lager with Pickerings, which is a New Brunswick beer.
Yeah.
And they have a small system here in town, and Christian actually, he works there on Sundays, and we're kind of friends with the owner, so they allowed us to kind of pitch in. So for me, I got a lot of experience, with that equipment. But when you did the similar thing at Gahan, like what did you actually like take away from being on that bigger system? Or did you find like, I don't know, for me, I was happy to get back to my own system, because it was like, I can't hook up like one of those those valves very easily or whatever. So what were the takeaways for you, I guess, when you kind of won that competition, you were able to go up to the bigger scale kind of thing?
Well, I like to sneak my way into breweries. Yeah. So wherever I am, I usually befriend someone, and I'm like, hello.
Okay. That's kind of what we did. Yeah.
Yeah. With winning the Gahan competition, it was great to go in and spend a day with them and brew on their smaller system down at the Gahan House in Charlottetown. And I'm somewhat familiar with systems of that size. I did an apprenticeship program in New Hampshire at a small microbrewery, so I'm familiar with that scale, and I enjoy kind of brewing at that level. But at the end of the day, I like coming back to my system because it's what I know. And scaling up is kind of a whole different beast compared to homebrew level, but I like playing around with the equipment. It's fun. Yeah.
So many easier things you can do. Like I noticed, like when we did it, you can set the whirlpool speed to, the brewer knew exactly where to set it. For us, it's like, we just turn the pump on and it kind of goes on our system. Yeah. So you can't really dial in the, revolutions per minute or speed of the whirlpool or whatever. But yeah, there's some fun things there too that happen.
There's some fun things. You gotta, everyone, the ins and outs of your systems, right? So even at, that scale, someone who's not used to it, we know the basics of it, right? But we don't know exactly how each little thing works. And that's, one day it'd be nice to be able to learn something at that level, but it's, that's a whole different.
Yeah, that's a career change for you.
That's a career change, yeah.
Yeah. So Derek mentioned the Gohan Contest, of course. So can you tell us a little bit about the beer that you won the competition with? Like, what was take us through your thought process of designing it for, for a competition? Like I said, a lot of us, we make beer because it's fun, not because we're trying to impress anybody or get accolades for it. So take us through your thought process of designing a beer for the competition, and then what style it was that you won with.
So I kind of picked out a beer that I'd already done and entered based on the styles that they had selected for that competition. Mm-hmm. And it was a stout.
Smart. That's very smart.
Yeah. So the inspiration behind the beer, actually I got when I was in Ireland at Guinness. And I went to their craft beer Open Gate Brewery, mm-hmm. Which is an amazing spot. Loved it. I was there November a few years ago, and it was during Stout Week, ideally.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
My happy place. Thank you. So I tried a beer there that they called a chili stout. And when I was drinking it, I was like, it perplexed me because I was like, it didn't quite have, like, when you think chili, you're going to think heat and all that type of stuff, but it didn't do that for me. And I was like, what have they done here? And so I started questioning the bartender intensely to figure out what had happened in this beer. And as it turned out, I figured it out on my own, but they used Szechuan peppercorns, which is a unique spice and used in a lot of Chinese Szechuan style cooking. It has kind of like a tingly, peppery sensation to the tongue. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to make it. So I got back and kind of like thought through how I would do it, and made up kind of a really like nice full body stout, guessed at a peppercorn level.
Oh, that's good, yeah.
I think we actually had that one. I know for a fact I've had the Gahan winner, and I remember a pepper one. So that's
it was called I called it Tingles in the end.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. They had it up here too at the in St. John. Yeah,
it did make its way around.
It did, yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised and happy that I was able to like kind of get out there and people would have the opportunity to try it. It packed a punch. It was like 7.5% or something, and had. But I'm very proud of that beer. Even before entering it into the competition, like that wasn't the goal of that beer at all. It was just I wanted to make a beer I really enjoyed while I was traveling, and I was just happy that everybody else enjoyed it.
Yeah,
yeah, it was good.
Yeah, I've made it a couple times now. So
yeah. Well, now people are asking for it, probably, right?
Well, I hope so. Like,
yeah.
it came out this time last year, right before everything kind of shut down. So it did get out to some of the places, but I never did get a good idea on how. I know my friends all bought it out.
Yeah. Well, it sold pretty good here because I remember they had it at they have a Gahan House in the Port City here, so I remember it in the coolers there. But yeah, I think the reach was pretty good.
Yeah.
Like Chris and I, we try to drink whatever we can find too that's new, so that was a pretty interesting one. Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I like to do weird, strange things. So
yeah, no, that's good.
That's good. Yeah.
So I guess my leading after that would be, what's the like weirdest beer you've ever made that actually like, I know I've done some as well, but sometimes it's like a dud, so I don't even want to talk about it. But like, what's one that you made that was like pretty good and like, other than the pepper one, I guess. But is there other things you've made that were with your food background too? It'd be pretty interesting because you'd probably be throwing some stuff in there that people wouldn't think about.
Yeah, sometimes I do some different things. That Szechuan one was probably the most unique.
Okay.
That I have done. I did, however, just make a strawberry lemon basil sour, which turned out half decently. I sometimes, and my parents had done this too. We played around with herbs in brews, which is a challenge. You got to find the right one, and you never know what you're going to get when you work with fresh herbs. But that strawberry lemon basil one was kind of like a random idea I had this past summer, which it was okay.
Yeah, it was drinkable. Yeah,
it was drinkable. And that's the main thing.
Yeah.
But no, I do. I tend to try. Well, actually, the one that I'm currently consuming is what I call my Middle Earth IPA, and I used all New Zealand hops in a New England IPA style. So that gave a unique flavor profile, which I actually was quite happy with too.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Nice. Very cool. So you're in the practice of giving your beer interesting names like the rest of us are, which is I think is like
I try. Sometimes it doesn't work out that well.
Yeah. We kind of have a thing where it's like we don't name the beer until we actually know it's good. Like we have to make sure it tastes good, or we don't name it. So when people ask,
I don't name it. I don't name it until I've tasted it.
Yeah, it's like bad karma to call it something cool and then it tastes like garbage. Yeah.
Exactly. No, I might have some ideas float around, but I don't put them out into the universe until I've tasted it. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. So I'd like to ask a few questions about what the homebrewing community is like in Nova Scotia. So yeah, as I mentioned when we were talking a little bit before we started recording, we're starting to get established here in Southern New Brunswick, and we've got some great customers, and we're starting to get to know even people who haven't been customers of the shop yet, just kind of chatting with them. And we try to be very interactive on like the Canadian Homebrewing Facebook groups and the Brew Nosers forum, and just wherever people are talking beer. But it's especially with COVID, it's not the same as face-to-face handshake, cheers, the whole 9 yards. So can you tell us a little bit about what the homebrewing community specifically in Nova Scotia is like?
Yeah, well, I'm still kind of, since I moved back to Nova Scotia a year, a little less than a year ago, and I had been out of province for a few years. So I'm still actually trying to get my way into the homebrew community here too. So I like there are the Brew Nosers. I definitely am part of some women's brewer groups. I actually just spent some time at the local brewery here in Truro, and we did a women's brew together, and some ladies get together to do that, which was a ton of fun. I'm very, very much part of, women brewers. And so no, I think that the community, I think there is a fairly significant community around here. It's just still trying to kind of find, like you said, COVID's made it a challenge.
Right.
And, prior to that, it was always going out to beer fests and meeting everybody out there and having a good time. And, we haven't had those, which is sad.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
But yeah, I would like to get more. I wish I could say more about it, but I'm still trying to kind of, find my way there too, with not being kind of here as long as what.
Yeah, for sure. So the other places, I think you mentioned New England and PEI, places you've lived. Did you have any really interesting or hot homebrew scenes in those places that you were a part of? Like,
in New England, it's big. I was part of a homebrew group in New England called Brew Free or Die.
For that area.
Very American, patriotic. Yeah, I like it.
It was perfect.
Yeah.
And a good group of people get together like once a month at a house and just drink and chat. And that was kind of a fun community to be part of. In PEI, where I was previous, we kind of formed our own little women's group of people who enjoyed drinking beer, and I, being the brewer of the bunch, was there educating and I always from time to time did some brew days with them, so they'd come over and we go through the process of making a beer and just eat and drink and have a good time. So yeah, I've always tried to kind of create a community or be part of a community wherever I am, and I hope to, once the world allows us to do that again easily, that I can continue.
Just jump back in. Yeah.
So back to your recipes. I know you said you brew a lot of stouts. So I guess, like, for me, I have kind of this like couple ingredients that I always love to put in the beer, because I think it makes it, like, I don't know, probably does nothing, but to me, it kind of makes it feel like it's my own. Is there any ingredient that you have, like a special malt or anything like that you would, add just even a handful or a sprinkle just to give it that special touch? Like,
I always add oats.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. Well, stouts. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But even in ones that you don't necessarily, I don't add it to sours. But even kind of like an IPA or anything like that, I tend to just throw oats in. Yeah. just body, head retention. I just have it in my brain that, I want them there. Yeah. So that's kind of a standard that I do. Other than that, it's game on with whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I like to try different malts. I try different yeasts when the style kind of allows, and hops are fair game. I love playing with hops.
Yeah.
So I will try anything that I can get my hands on. I also grow them, so like it's I enjoy all different stuff when it comes.
Do you have like a go-to that you put in for a lot of things, like as the backbone, or you just kind of try something new every single time? I'm Cascade. Yeah, you can't go wrong. Yeah.
Citra is one of my favorites, and becoming a big fan of Galaxy now. Okay. Yeah, but again, it depends on what I'm brewing too.
Yeah.
But I do those citrusy ones. I'm a really big fan of.
Yeah.
Nice. We've got some locally grown New Brunswick Cascade hops at the shop right now. So you can give me your address after the call and I'll send you some down. You can try some New Brunswick ones.
Excellent.
Is there an ingredient or a combination of ingredients that you've tried over the years that really didn't work out for you? Or maybe a different way, is there a beer that you tried to make or a style that you tried to make that you just haven't had much luck with?
There was a beer I tried to make here a long time ago. where I wanted to make a milk stout, and I wanted to use raspberry in it, and yeah, it didn't work.
Nice way to say it, right? Like it just didn't work. Yeah. So.
It just, it just didn't. And milk stouts are challenging, and it just, that one was no, was pretty much how that one ended up. Currently, I'm trying to master getting a good juicy IPA. Like getting that nice bright hop profile. I haven't quite found the right like hop combination, or if it's not quite conducive to bottles. I'm still working on that.
Yeah.
Not quite where I want it yet.
What varieties do you grow?
Well, here's a funny thing. It's mystery.
Okay.
We have some of those too. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. The hops that I have traveled. They were growing in the backyard of where I lived in Rhode Island. My landlords had them as privacy vines. And when I went and looked at the place, when deciding if I wanted to rent or not, I saw the hop vines and I looked at them and I was like, hop vines?
It was meant to be, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, so where do I sign? Like I'm moving in tomorrow. Thanks.
Yeah.
So when I left, I casually dug some up and brought them back. and planted them at my parents, and grew really well. And then I moved to PEI, so dug some up and took them with me to PEI, planted them there, and now I've moved back to Truro. Well, and I'm not originally from Truro, so now I've planted some here. So I just keep planting these hops wherever I go.
Planting your own little flag as you.
Yeah, and I have no idea what they are. I think they're based on kind of flavor and such. They might be like cluster or something. But they're pretty standard bittering.
Okay.
From what I could tell. But
yeah, Derek mentioned earlier we have a friend that has their family has a camp up in Wickham, New Brunswick. It's about an hour from here, and he was telling us, my parents have this property and there's a gazebo there and hops grow on it, and he offered us to come up and check them out. Well, we got up there and it was like a 10-hour day. There was so much. They were over here and they were over there, just everywhere. So we ended up getting quite a quantity of them, but we were so excited we immediately brewed with them, and we didn't really kind of get into the nitty gritty. So we're hoping to go up again this fall, maybe do a brew while we're there and actually play around and try and figure out what their characteristics are, so we can, they're just going to be wild hops to us, but it'd be nice to know a little bit more scientific information about it.
Yeah. I've been playing with the idea of finding a way to scientifically figure out what these are. Yeah. My brain doesn't like not knowing. but it's also fun. Like, and wild hops, like here in this region, they grow really well.
Yeah.
So it's cool to play with those.
Nice.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what they were at that farm back in the day. They were just like a wild plant, and one of the farms here, Moose Mountain, they actually have their own wild variety that they haven't really associated with anything. They just kind of grow wild. But it's funny, I've been to St. Andrews and seen them growing up like telephone poles, and I don't think anyone knows what they are. But you can see the city comes by and cuts them down every year. It probably gets on their nerves to have to cut them down all the time. But yeah,
you're like, just give in, just let it go.
Yeah, just let it go, and then someone can harvest them and make beer or something. But
exactly.
Yeah. So I guess one other question. So like Christian said, we had kind of a weird request for a beer. So there was this Cadbury cream egg beer that came out. I think it was in New England. So somewhere like in the States. So we're trying to work on a recipe here for just to brew like a 1 gallon batch as a trial, because we don't want to, invest the money into a 5 gallon before we see what happens. But we're trying to talk about the different malts. I don't know if you're a big cream egg fan, but try to get a little bit of a recipe down to do this tomorrow. Actually, Christian was talking about making it. I don't know what your input would be. So we were talking about, he said he read something about vanilla glucose mixture in the bottling phase and then using brown sugar, that kind of thing. I don't know. Would you have any advice for us? mean, since we're just talking about beer.
Yeah. Cadbury. Yeah. Well, so sweet.
Yeah.
It was a friend of ours. She sent me a post on Instagram. It was Goose Island and Cadbury did like a legit collaboration. I don't know. It could be terrible for all I know, but a friend of my wife's really likes cream eggs, and she's like, "Hey, you should try to make this."
Yeah.
So I was wasn't busy at the time, so I was like, "Hey, let's start digging into it." So I built a recipe really quickly, and then I started getting into research. And generally, there's a few decent posts on Reddit about it, about going big on the chocolate, to not have to use too much lactose. You don't want to go crazy with it, but a little bit of lactose. A lot of chocolate. And then there was also an 8-ounce addition of brown sugar at 0 minutes of the boil, which I think he was trying to use some sweetness for it. But the interesting thing was this, instead of using dextrose for priming sugar, which Derek and I usually use, it was a vanilla, liquid glucose, and granulated sugar, like a very, very small amount for a primer, to try and get a little bit of lingering, I guess, that vanilla taste to go.
Vanilla taste.
Right? So yeah.
That's interesting. To use that before bottling, I've never thought about that.
So I'm brewing tomorrow an IPA for a recipe Derek and I have been putting together, and we wanted to try for a while. So I thought, while my mash was steeping or I was waiting for it to cool, I'm like, I might just do like a 1-gal brew in a bag on the stovetop and just see how it goes, right? So,
yeah. Well, definitely for like getting that chocolatey, you need lots of chocolate, definitely some vanilla. Brown sugar, I think, is a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah. I as long not you don't want to go too sweet, obviously, but that might help get that dessert type of profile. But I'm obviously here just trying to think about a Cadbury cream egg.
I feel like we really surprised you, because we talked about what questions we wanted to ask you, and then just before you jumped on the call, Derek was like, "We should ask her about that Cadbury beer."
I'm thinking about it here now, and I'm like, well, it's milk chocolate and sugar.
That's actually why we were like a couple minutes late. That's why we were late getting ready, because we were talking about the recipe. Now, Christian was telling me about it. I was like, Chelsea's ready to go here. And we were talking about the recipe, like, what are we going to do about this beer? And I was like, well, why don't we just ask Chelsea what's going on? So.
No, I think brown sugar, actually, I put a little bit of brown sugar in that Tingles at the end. Okay. Yeah, just to kind of give a bit more body and slight sweetness. So, and you would never really tell that it's there. So I think the brown sugar is a way to go with that. And if you have vanilla, is always a tough flavor to kind of.
I'm always worried about getting that oily texture from the extract and stuff.
Yeah, and also vanilla is hard to come good vanilla is hard to come by.
Yeah.
But if you have some, I think it would be beneficial. Like kind of. But I'm curious about that stuff before the bottling, though. That's.
We'll keep you posted.
Keep you posted on that.
So I guess we'll just kind of open it up to you, Chelsea, at the end of the call here. If you have anything you'd like to say to the homebrewers out there, anything you want to ask us about New Brunswick or the shop or anything, but we really appreciate your time. This has been great. So you have the floor.
Oh, well, no, it was great to kind of have a chat. I've never kind of done this before. So it was kind of fun to kind of sit and chat, and homebrewing, just go for it, people. It's fun. You get to experiment. Doesn't matter if it doesn't work all the time. That's kind of like what I always say to people, just experiment and enjoy what you're doing. A brew day, you make a day of it, you get to drink some beer, you get to make some beer, bring people over, have fun. It's, I'm kind of all about that when it comes to brewing and sharing it with everybody. So.
Are there more competitions in your future, or?
We'll have to see. Not currently, because I didn't have a chance to get something ready for this past Gahans, and things were done a little differently this year. But I hope so. I would like to. Have to keep my eye out for some of the Nova Scotia ones.
Yeah.
But also, like, not just Nova Scotia, like the Maritimes in general, we have a great craft beer scene. Like New Brunswick is like, I've spent a lot of time going around drinking up there and exploring the brewery. So like I'm looking forward to get back and definitely try more.
Awesome. Okay. Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in to the interview tonight. I'll make sure I put all of Chelsea's Instagram information in the description of the YouTube video so that you can touch base with her and ask your own how to brew some wacky beer combinations, whatever. Yeah. I'm sure she'll be happy to give you feedback.
Any questions? I'm here to chat.
Awesome. All right. So thanks a lot, Chelsea. Derek, thanks a lot. And see you later, everybody. Cheers.
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 Cheers.